This is the show, and AKA show with is usually what I say, but I'm actually here to record and have on record what ideas I came up with for my business, originally named Fish and Farm, and I thought of aquaponics as a business venture for Atlantic City, New Jersey. And most recently, we named it AZ Aquaponics in 2022. This is going to be a long-winded video. First and foremost, let me just give the disclaimer. So I'm going to come back around and put the timestamps in the description of the video so you can skim at your leisure and look at the sections that are most important to you. I'm going to start off with my backstory of how I got to 2026 and what presentation I'm going to give, and go all the way back to 2014 when I originally had the idea, and even give a little prelude to that. But you guys know me on this YouTube channel. I'm just posting it on the YouTube channel because it's world access point of video, so somebody somewhere can see it. And it's really about open protection in the sense that copywriting my idea or trademarking my idea or patenting my idea is beyond my capacity at the moment. Financially and relationally, I don't have an attorney that can do me a favor. I don't have all the skills to maintain all the routine of the filing. Even if I did, I really don't have the funds. Every single time I get cash in my hands these days, it's going to bills in the family. So I don't have patent fees and trademark fees a lot right now in cash. And in my business ventures, I'm a solo entrepreneur, so all of my cash is out of pocket. I'm a solo entrepreneur in a disadvantaged category, in a disadvantaged community. So I'm African American, I'm female, as well as my community, Atlantic City, New Jersey, is currently low income majority, not even moderate income. If you actually look up our salaries across our city by our wards, average salary, average education level, family size, all of those are all low. And so it's not the space to expect me to have a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of people to connect me. But all of those things are seen as excuses, not actual limitations. So here I am sharing my ideas. It's really inspired also by a young man that I don't know the name of, but he's been recently promoting himself about um, refining waste into fuel. And I want to say plastic waste into fuel. And his open suggestion of trademark secrets as opposed to patents being the true viability of protection in business was thought for me. And they used to always have kind of loophole ways of protecting yourself. But one of the other alternative phrases is hiding in plain sight. So there's not going to be a guaranteed large audience for this, but the point is that I've stated my piece, and if I die tomorrow, somebody knows these were my originated and authentic ideas, inspired from other observations in my community, in addition to the ones that I already mentioned, and then research, conversation, attending a whole bunch of business coaching sessions and business classes before eventually going to business school, all for a mission-based business of aquaponic growing around that technology. And it was really for the food desert aspect of our city being an issue, and then eventually progress to the business goal output that I'm going to describe here. So I'm gonna give that prelude of, me having the background myself of who I am as an African American woman and where I come from in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And so the idea in 2014 came about when I was on a weight loss journey as well as a school transition. I had just gotten out of nursing school the second time, and I was very health oriented, and I was getting into fitness and health and really having a hard time finding food that was fresh or processed that oriented towards a healthy lifestyle in the community. And it was something that was frustrating when you're actually making an effort and you go to medical professionals and you talk to fitness coaches, or they come to you and offer you an opportunity for a program, but you can't necessarily follow what the rules are if the food's not near where you are. And that was what I focused on. I didn't focus on a whole bunch of other details that could contribute to that. So that's where the idea came from. How could we get more fresh food access in the city, especially for those who need it, people who have a disease diagnosis like obesity, people who have uh, diabetes, high blood pressure, the non-invasive, sorry, I was checking to make sure I was recording because I'm not good with making sure that the screen recording is on. But all of those things that are helped, managed, if not cured, with improved diet, how could we get those foods more regularly in the community at best quality and lowest costs, right? So aquaponics was an ending result of the most natural, simplistic, even though it is a complicated growth system by some people's standards, a simplistic growth system that could grow plant foods as well as protein, meat protein through the fish included in it and have that in the community. And that was where the idea came from. It's simple that we can grow fish and other seafood, because you can also grow crustaceans in an aquaponic system, and then you can grow fruit-bearing plants, green plants. Over time, I learned that you can grow a lot of things. And so I think there was a big boom at the time. You can go back and look 2014, 15, 16. The years have a lot of indoor grow system development and promotion and mainstreaming. There's everything from small operations of microgreen farms and people's small storage bins all the way to scale up to multiple locations of indoor acreage of vertical farming of microgreens or full-size lettuce. As simple as somebody grabbing the seeds and starting with a couple of shells, all the way to Morgan Stanley funding Aero Farms, just to give a direct reference example of a business, but also a scaled business, funded and still operational over 12 years later, right? So there was a big boom. I think everybody was also thinking about that. And I got infatuated with the idea and really wanted it to benefit our city. And so I never really let it go. As soon as I researched enough of the basics of how to form a business, found a location in the city where it would be viable by my estimation, what type of jobs it could be. I wrote out a business plan. I called a real estate agent to go actually view and tour the warehouse. I visited my city hall and spoke to our city planner at the time. I approached her directly, it was a woman, and spoke to her about my idea and finding support. So I could also find funding sources. And I also approached the Casino Redevelopment Association, which is unique to our city. I approached them at the time about the property as well as funding. And that I was 23 and I was fresh out of a second nursing program that I didn't complete, trying to find what to do with myself and my time and trying to renew my health. And I think I was ambitious, but not educated or connected. And that was a limitation of mine. There was a lot of deterrence that I couldn't really push through. And so I kind of just defaulted to continuing to ask more questions and work a lot harder to research alternatives as opposed to maybe go higher up in the scale or completely just change the plan altogether. For a minute, I thought of partnership with somebody so that I wasn't an individual coming with this grand idea, sounding mostly like I'm personal profit centric, as opposed to mission centric, but also profit for the community. So social enterprise centric. This is going to be financially and socially profitable at the same time. We are going to have jobs. We are going to have more financial stability, and we're also going to have more food available. So it was supposed to be about all of that, but to communicate that as an individual coming with just this indoor farm fancy idea, I felt like it wasn't enough. So I really was looking for somebody who was more vetted in business and interested in partnering. But that's a whole journey in itself, really trying to promote yourself to somebody for a random business idea. And so that was a no-go over the time. So to this day, I still haven't partnered with anybody, and nobody's presented me with a similar idea either, ideas or plans related to anything. So every time I discuss it with somebody, it's completely unique to anything that they've considered. When I do approach people who do have similar ideas, they're pretty advanced into the idea. They've taken their money, they've made their connections, they've started their operations on whatever plans they had, and they're very focused. And so it's as simple as either I'm coming as a customer, or I'm coming to be a student, or those are the options. So when it came to joining forces with anybody, that hasn't happened. But to bring it all the way up to today and then to show on screen what I actually wanted to share, I started out with a food focus and ended up in a housing focus because that's where we've come in the last 12 years. At the time, the population was about 10 or 12% higher than it is right now. I think we're at like 39,000 residents of Atlantic City. And at the time, we were closer to 45, teetering to 46. And also our job viability and our cost of living was a lot better. And our crime rates were also a lot better. They haven't really increased. I should say our crime reputation. Because if you actually look at the stats on our city, it's kind of still the same. But if you look at the media representation of what our crime rates are and hear word of mouth, it's actually pretty poor what people think of what our crime is like here. And if you just look from afar, it doesn't look the way that it actually is. And so with that being said, today I have more of a focus on the aquaponic farming system, the grow system, and the technology being used to be an asset for housing as opposed to food production only. There was another company. There's another small business nonprofit in the community that actually did pick up that idea while I was out of town, as well as taking a rest. I moved to Atlanta for a couple of years and then came back to Atlantic City. And when I came back, there was a whole nother organization that had been here, but had never promoted themselves as interested in aquaponic growth and indoor growing in general, let alone aquaponic growing. But there's actually two organizations that have incepted and developed. They've been around for about the same length of time that I've had the idea, but they have not touched on indoor growing until about the last 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years. And so now one has an operation and one has one in plans. And so that was something that was triggering to me to find out because I had the idea for so long, as well as the one that has some operations right now. They're hydroponic, not aquaponic. Uh, the city planner that I first spoke to was a part of that organization. And when I spoke with her, wanted to place me into the program that they had established, but not necessarily uh, give me any credit for having connected with her at the time that I did previous, and maybe consider that I had some more to contribute than just, again, a customer or a student. Like even conceived the thought, we really didn't have a discussion about it. It was more, I want you to do this for me, toned. This is the option that I have to offer. I'm not really interested in much more. And I don't know whether or not that's how it meant, but that's how it landed, is the point. So the result was that I didn't get enrolled. Also, she didn't control the whole program. There were other organizers in that hydroponic growing program, and they never followed through. So even though she made a promise of my participation, and I humbled myself as far as my idea of presentation with her earlier and did try to participate, they didn't follow up with me and got other people to participate. So long story short, the other two organizations have the food idea still at the forefront, and they're finally promoting it openly and getting reputation for it. So luckily, I was already developing my idea further. I had progressed in the capabilities of aquaponics and my ideas of how it could benefit my community and become a profitable business that created jobs around where I live and improved the quality of life and made me a wealthy person in the process and others wealthy as well. So I'll just pull up now. I'm going to share my screen and then I'm going to pull up my city plan for economic development that I actually did submit. Eventually, the city did have RFP that they opened for bid, and it was, excuse me, it was plan for economic development for Atlantic City. Now, primarily the RFP was planned to include review of the plans that they already had, but the requirements that they really had for services were reviewing past plans and making comments on them, as well as coming up with new assessment tools to review and report on the state of the city and then initiate suggestions. And that's basically what it was. It was a new planning opportunity. So this is what I actually submitted for my final plans. If I can get it to open up in Adobe. I might need to open it in Chrome. Let's see. What we can do, because I have been having a little relative with this. All right. So this was the RFP design. And let me see. Which page mine is, so I can't just skip the get to my section, I'll go back and forth through everything. Okay, so this was my final submission to that RFP, and just to show my personal passion and connection to the plan, and also it being about more than me, even though I am deeply connected to it, it also being about more than me, but the community as a whole, and me just feeling the effects of it and realizing how profitable it will be for everyone to have these types of improvements. I did make sure to add in a personal line about these plans being the bones for multiple years of events and projects that can be implemented to improve the financial outcomes of the city in the next 5 years. There are multiple organizations in the surrounding cities that would need to participate for their own benefit as well. Atlantic County suffers when Atlantic City suffers, and the state of New Jersey suffers too. I want people who live here to have the perspective of a supportive citizen. And so I had already given my description of, my family's relationship to some of the hardships that we have as a city and why we need further development severely, not just routinely. And that was my close. So this was the outline of everything. The Economic Growth Initiative, the NJ Nurture funding packet that I customized a program to match. NJ Nurture was a program by our prior First Lady's initiation, driven to support improved birthing conditions in New Jersey, pregnancy and birthing conditions for women of all kinds, and especially underserved and disadvantaged women, and to just keep our babies safe. And so I mixed that program with the aquaponics goal of growing materials. So this is, all right, I'm going to put a timestamp here of describing what I actually came to as far as a goal. Aquaponics can grow pretty much everything. And I saw a video about growing cannabis in aquaponics about 5 years ago that was made for a company that was extracting oil. So their process was aquaponic growing and then harvesting bud and extracting oil. And they would donate the fish to the homeless shelters for food. And they exclusively grew that crop for that purpose, and that was their business model. But that was my first time seeing those two things tied together. I had had it as a suggestion previous, and like I said, I was focused on food production more than any other plants. But seeing it in action made me have the idea in the back of my mind. It was more viable when I saw how rich the plants grew in the system, like lots of other plants do. And so I always had the idea. So then I came to this time where our housing shortage has been incredibly negative affecting on the city. Our homelessness is at a visually triggering rate. I'll put it that way. When you see how many people are actually out and how many people are struggling with finding a home, when you talk to people, it really bothers you. And when you see what homes are for sale and the quality that they're actually in, and where there's even option to find materials or tools. Like even if you had the trades training, you really can't find materials and tools in a reasonable driving location around here. So I really started to think about how growing hemp as opposed to cannabis would become a option for faster producing the raw materials for construction. Um, I don't remember where I later saw a hempcrete video, but I did eventually see a hempcrete instead of concrete, a hempcrete video that showed hemp as an alternative to traditional lumbers of all kinds, right? So the option of growing hemp in general in fields is commonplace. And internationally, there's large farmers of hemp in fields, and there's a um, historic practice of growing it in field in high density and in a certain growth cycle to a certain height, and all of these things. And then processing that hemp into multiple materials for construction. So we're leaving out textiles and other things that can be extracted from hemp processing. We're focusing on housing as opposed to focusing on food. And so we're looking for construction materials. To put it in a one-liner, I thought we already have the technology for cannabis growth and the mindset of cannabis growth here. What we have that 75% of the other parts of the world don't have is location access to wine sourcing. The other half of hempcrete, the hemp plant, is hydrated lime powder. And so you mix a lime powder, hydrated lime powder, and the magnesium powder, magnesium oxide powder that's extracted from that, which is like the dried one. Those both can be used as building materials for drywall or bricks And so we already have hemp growth mindset here and equipment here. And what we don't realize that we have is the sourcing for shells, seashells of all kinds, clam shells, mussel shells, oyster shells, crustaceans in general. The shellfish produce the shells that, when processed in heat, result in the lime powder. And so whether it's Colorado or Wisconsin or Kansas, any other inland state, they may have the ability to do the indoor growing as far as the hemp and really scale that production, but usually in a system that has the growth rate to be able to produce the hemp, you're going to have fish as opposed to crustaceans that you grow. So the only way that you're going to be able to compete with ocean access for shellfish is possibly add an additional production of another animal like snails that produces shells that can then be processed into lime powder. So the point is, we have a high competitive advantage by the logistics, by the location that we hold. Just being near the ocean, we can access the shells faster than anybody else could on average and process them into the powders, as well as we have the equipment and the skills to grow aquaponically indoor and in the urban center or near the urban center at a minimum within 30 minutes drive of the ocean. So we could actually grow hemp indoors as well as process lime at scale and start to really produce housing through hempcrete and other hemp-based and lime-based materials, material outputs. So that was what my culminating idea was. And so I was doing the best that I can, putting all those thoughts into words and then putting those words on the paper formed into a plan that has simplified results. Because even me explaining it, trying to share all the good points to it and try to make it halfway interesting, let alone sexy and salesy, but not shady or possibly scammy, right? It's a job in my head. It's a job in my head to actually make sure that I'm showing the balance because I'm not a scientist in biology or sustainability or anything related to that. I actually have a bachelor's and master's in business. After all these years, that's what I ended up studying is business administration and management. And so I can form a system. I can look at bottlenecks and constraints in a system. I can plan capacity of a system, of operations of a business. I can think of the financial advantages and disadvantages. I can look at all stakeholders and their benefits. And so things like that I know about, but I know nothing of how to describe the biology of the animals and plants involved in the systems. I don't know the math of how to balance these systems and those sides of the actual business, I really don't know. So this is more of an idea and an idealistic dream than it actually is practice. There's plenty of history and commonplace practice that's people are already doing, but this particular combination of all these ideas in this place, I just believe, I just have a belief that it's worth trying. And worst case scenario, we literally would have tried our best. That's really where I'm going on right here is the entrepreneurial spirit of chance taking, risk taking for a good outcome is what comes out of a business mindset. And so I submitted this to the city as well as I'll just breeze through it a little bit and read some of the points of the aquaponics side, as well as then I'll show you the presentation that I shared with the sustainability department at the local university, Stockton University, with the dean and all of the professors, and then that will be my close, okay? The opening was, like I already mentioned, my presentation was related to the NJ nurtures and babies. And that was because it was a city planning RFP that I was responding to. So the population is economically relevant because it influences the census and federal budgeting. And so that's why I tied that into the housing portion. We not only needed to build better housing, but our population, as I stated, decreased over the last 10 plus years. So we don't even have the full capacity of planning and population to have people local to live in houses if we just build a whole bunch of houses. And we're having a really hard time just getting visitors, let alone getting people to come and move in and stay. So I thought it made a lot of sense to try and increase people's motivations on having a family here. If we want people to come and stay long term, we can't just build beautiful houses, but they have to also know that they can have children in the future, and those children will have those beautiful houses to be in, and it'll be safe and healthy and things like that. So we needed to promote safe childbearing and raising. And so that's how I tied that into the housing production increase. Well, we're not just building houses for retirement homes for people to move into town. We're not just building more housing for tourist visits, more Airbnbs or short-term rentals. We're actually building homes for the current residents and for future residents. And in order to have those houses really be viable, we also need people to know that they can have their kids and raise their kids in the city, and we care about that. So that was how the open involved the NJ Nurtures side of it. And I included the promotion of marriage and family and lots of social structures and programs related, and retention of families once they do move in, regeneration of those families instead of gentrification, a lot of competition with tourists that come to visit, or uh, people having secondary homes. Um, so that was how that open went. And then I discussed the job creation through having more children alone before we got to the housing section. Okay. So this is all about that whole section there was all about just having kids, having families, financing that side, just having people present with the infrastructure that we have here already. And then we started to move into the second half of the plan, which involved the AC aquaponics portion. Okay. So that's all of the description of the maternal job production from increasing family retention. Okay. Over a 5-year plan. Now, the next section I go into somewhere it eventually hits. Okay, yep. Okay, so now we have the AC aquaponics section, and that was my culminating name, like I said. So AC Aquaponics is about Atlantic City's green industry. That was something that was actually requested in the RFP, was to move into new industries than the ones that we already have established and future industries. So, like I said, we did start a green zone around cannabis production and sale in the city, one that actually is innovative in the country and the world, truth be told, as far as the location type. Once again, we really do have an asset of being at the shore and being a small shore town. I'm sure everybody knows all of the historic smoke towns from all around the world, but none of them have the beach that we have and the environment that we have at this location. So I'm looking at it economically in that this is what we have that's cool about us. This is what we have that can make us the strongest at what we specifically can do. So from seed to structure, the goal was to have AC Aquaponics be Atlantic City's premier aquaponics powered hemp facility producing high grade hemp for industrial applications. And so I just used AI and produced a couple images to visualize what the goal was of aquaponic growing. You see the pool beds there, as opposed to it being open field based like traditional hemp production or hemp farming. And then you also see the key part of hemp farms is the industrial side, where you actually do break down the hemp into all of its forms, from its stalks to its what is it called? The torn up parts and the fibers. I can't think of all the words. Like I said, I'm not the scientist on that side. I'm not the practitioner or a farmer, but the herd of it, the inside of the core of the stem, as well as the fibers extracted from that process. All of those things end up coming out producing a concrete block made of hemp as opposed to stone. And its long-term and short-term viability is better. What I've learned since I've been interested in this is that the main disadvantage is one, the lack of education and lack of scaled reputation. So there's not evidence or data for people to really review historically that it really outperforms everybody. So it's a lot of speculation and daydreaming that we're basing it off of and projecting, not necessarily everyone experiencing this great housing revitalization. So that is a limitation. And then because of the lack of scale, there's a lot of people that just say it's expensive, even in the field, to grow. But with that said, he said, she said, and whispers are with everything. And so you really don't know until you collect your own data. As I really don't know until I collect my own data. And that's why I went on to present to the sustainability department a goal of having a study, of actually having a pilot study where we did an aquaponic growth system warehouse that was on the college campus. And we had the goal of actually growing hemp aquaponically and producing all of these hemp outputs of the herd and the fibers and the microfibers even, and actually growing in the environment, as well as collecting and processing shells from the sea. They already have a marine studies department there, and other things that they study. And so I just thought that it made sense to kind of tie that in and get with the scientists that had the gaps to fill on my side. So now I have to find where that PowerPoint is that I shared with them. Here it is. Okay. I don't even know what I can make, but I think it's pretty straightforward, uh, related to that. Um, that there would be a mutual interest between AC Aquaponics and Stockton University to collaborate on a sustainability-driven initiative that supports student development, community revitalization, and industrial innovation through the design and construction of 25 hemp-based homes in Atlantic City. That was the goal output, was to not only grow the hemp, process the hemp, but then actually make housing out of it in the long term. And so I kind of developed a plan more elaborated, 5 years, as opposed to what I presented to the city. Presented a plan of working with the university. All right, Steve, we're getting there. Uh, and so this is the exact presentation that I gave to them. I actually didn't record it the day of. They gave me pretty great feedback as far as being impressed with my consideration of all the ideas and not really having a background in it, as well as some suggestion of connection with other organizations that are established in the state and involved in hemp growth already, and housing outputs with the goal. People who are already producing hempcrete and trying to build. Um, they're about 2.5 hours away. A lot of them, they're north, and there's very few that they could name. And none of them were actually producing hemp in this uh, system technology. So nobody was doing hempcrete with aquaponic tie-in. We were doing traditional hemp farming. Okay, so this was the Housing and Industrial Innovation Plan, and I came up with this additional visual just to show the student slash job creation, the student involvement of actually processing the hemp and the output goal. And my offer was to create a formal study agreement with the university by growing industrial hemp and building hemp-based buildings. I also tied in my family's nonprofit with the purpose. My parents had the suggestion of not just building generalized housing, but building housing for students that were disadvantaged and underfunded. So that's that mission-based mindset of who can we help simply with the output part of the profits, right? Um, and so we thought of housing for students. We also thought of scholarship percentage of the profits being set aside for scholarship for the students in that particular department that studied this. So similar to Habitat for Humanity, everything's kind of internal where the people volunteer, they build the house, and they help each other out. I help you build your house, you help me build my house, and all of the money's kind of kept inside so that nobody has to go out looking. Everything's funded for the house, the labor and the materials, and they just kind of do the work. And so that's kind of where the mindset of the student housing came from and the scholarship. I said, besides the grant funding, that it should have a final profit-based project to sell the models of cost-effective, healthy employee housing to mid-size and large companies. So what I've learned, besides the profitability of the aquaponic farms, as well as the difficulty in financing with hemp growth, what I've learned in mission-based business is how do you make money is the number one question that is the same for any business. It doesn't change if you have a noble, honorable mission. People need to know, how is the profit made? How do we sustain responsibly as a business, let alone expand and absolutely expand, right? So that was the goal. We're not just building housing for disadvantaged students, but we also need to build housing types that mid-size and large-size businesses could come and purchase, a quicker turnaround on housing, a healthier version of housing for their employees to offer. I don't think anybody's really talked about a lot of employee planning lately. We've actually been talking about reducing labor in this AI agent world right now. We're thinking about making less people employed formally and thinking about universal incomes as opposed to earned incomes and titled incomes and things like that. Nevertheless, there's still going to be some people who are going to want to have an alternative production system than the generalized one, and it's still going to end up becoming an asset. That's how economics works and business works. The government will never come to the point where they're going to see that a business outputs something that government can't and really stop them or even be able to fully steal it, as opposed to they'll partner or allow it for the good of the people, because that's how government works. So eventually, like, we would be able to, we'll be able to build houses for employees a company that could afford to buy the house. So we could come set up the grow system, grow the hemp, harvest the shells. And that goal would be to stay in the state of New Jersey at first and really develop it here in the first 5 years and see what we were able to produce it for who, and gather all of the science numbers on the growth side, and all of the how that translates to the business side, all of the assets of the growth system, how it does grow faster or denser compared to the other one, the strength of the hemp in comparison to field growth hemp, the combination with the lime in timing and overtiming, and how it works in this environment, and how it's better than other housing options. All of those things we'd be able to document and see the cost values too, compared. Finally, how much we spent on everything, how much time we spent, how much money we spent, and really make a fair comparison. So that was what the goal was. And these are just the breakdowns of the collaboration points. It included the cultivation. Oh, sorry. It included the cultivation, processing, into blocks, site models, cost modeling, like I just mentioned, workforce training pathways, and pilot housing applications, modular or on-site buildings for those businesses to be the complete output, with the starting advantage and focus being on our proximity for seashell collection. And moving on. So this is a little.
Everything starts here. Tiny hemp seeds coming to life in our aquaponic system. Fish below the roots feed the plants, and the plants clean the water for the fish. A few short weeks and they become top.
And that was just a little visual that I came up with to show that hemp would be in aquaponics, and then this is one.
Hemp grows like a field of possibility. Stalks are shredded, fibers mixed with lime, then pressed into sturdy blocks. On the line, they cure into building bones strong and light.
And that shows how great even the free soil is, because that was not the pro paid system for that little teeny clip. But imagine if I did have the pro one and have like a 10-minute VR to maybe. Anywho, those were the ones that I made just to give samples
in a sunlit warehouse
of what was possible, some more photo examples, and how the school would have an impact of benefits from creating a lab to actually do the study, have new grants, influx, and pathways, and real design learning for the students of systems to housing and business and all of those things, right? And then these were some of the in-state sources for funds before we thought of any private funding from a VC or an angel or a business loan or anything like that. This was a study, so it was meant to be grant funded, since it's a publicly benefiting study, not just a financial benefit study. So this is the last slide or so, I think, of my actual goal of a expedited or accelerated plan of study. And we were supposed to partner, design the lab, build the first hemp housing, and then build pilot model home next to it. And then I gave idea of where we could go next and speak to further leadership within the university, and see what further interest we could have from other members and stakeholders that could collaborate and really get this thing going. And so that's what I presented to that department. And now I can stop sharing my screen. and come to a very lengthy close. So when I presented to them, like I said, they gave me positive feedback overall for the idea. The most open-minded and supportive uh, and initial statement that I got that really didn't come off as a cold shoulder was simply to work with what is already known because of the fact that it is so idealistic and um, unevidence-based. That the reality is that her experience in conducting a study in uh, sustainability, dealing with bugs, she actually did a bug study. And in her experience, the funding really just locks up after a certain point. So if you don't really have a clear cut plan on how you can make money along the way, the grant funding is not going to be enough and the money in between time will dry up and the study won't be complete anyway, is how she explained it. And so maybe starting off with what we do understand was a wiser uh, plan. So my response to that was, well, thank you for that contribution. That is very valuable. And so from that, I would suggest that then we focus on our logistical advantage of creating lime powder from shells, um, and have that as something to sell and make money along the way. We can produce that easier. It's something to scale. You could just have a place to keep the shells, pack the powder into bags, price them, and list them online and ship them out. So that is something that we can scale a lot quicker than all of the other factors in hempcrete home production. Just the base of that raw material, we have the natural resource access, and that would be a great way to get started. Because I was very ambitious, and I'm hard to take no for an answer when I really believe in something. Like I said, I really believe this is something that was worth taking a chance on. And you know, I'm going to end with the fact that sometimes I can believe in something really, really strong, and it can just not be its time, even if it is, even if it is to be, it's not right now in the most simplest form, in the most simple form, not right now, immediate, all at once, everything allowed. It has to build its way up and it needs to have more time to get there. So that's kind of what I learned through this whole experience of that final meeting and feeling vilified that I wasn't crazy completely for the idea. They didn't necessarily say that the idea was idiotic and impossible. They just said that they weren't interested at the time. They were more interested in if I had a business that opened up, having the students come and intern. That was their close with me. And so that's my close altogether is that when I get there, it'll be time. And until then, to not worry about rushing it, uh, but to just keep my positive mindset, my heart for others being helped in my profits, um, and just my belief in good things coming out because it's not worthless and it's not impossible. And that's really all that matters a little bit sometimes for me is just knowing that it is a good thing and it is possible and it'll happen if it's meant to happen when it's supposed to happen. So I'm going to end on that and thank you for however much you watched this. I really appreciate it. If you learned anything, if you're interested in anything, talk to me. If not, share it with somebody else who you think might be interested. And I'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to go outside and get some sunlight. This is everybody. Goodbye.